You know, honestly, I'm not really sure I've ever played a clean game of Marvel Champions. Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Nelson from Nelson All Over Cards, and today we are taking a look at the top 5 mistakes I am seeing players or new players make. So, the intro, that was kind of a joke, but there are a lot of ticky-tacky things that occur in this card game. It's a very complex kind of situation of events that you miss windows, there are things that are interpreted differently, there are wordings that could be a little bit better. So I just want to run through like my top 5 list of mistakes or questions that I get seen asked all the time on the Discord, on Reddit, on Facebook, and so we can kind of take a look together to get an idea and put all of these, culminate these, and hopefully this will be a fantastic resource for new and players alike. So kind of these are not necessarily in any order at all. These are just kind of like my stream of consciousness thoughts as I was writing down mistakes or questions or things, comments that I see a lot. And so not necessarily like the biggest or anything. I'm just going to go through and talk about it. The first thing that I want to talk about is the definition of you. So this is been kind of a cluster of chaos in the Marvel Champions scene, but basically what you is your hero. It is any event you play. So if it says after you attack, that includes an attack event. It is any upgrade that you have played on your hero. It does not include any supports or allies. That can be very tricky, and it can get very kind of nuancy in some of these determinations. So if you take like Hall of Heroes, it says after you defeat a minion, then you get to place a counter. If an ally that you control, which is different, defeats a minion, you don't get the counter. However, if like say you're playing Captain America and Captain America attacks or plays Heroic Strike and attacks and kills a minion, at that point you do get to place that counter. That is kind of the best way that I can concisely describe you. It is your hero, it is events you play, it is upgrades that you have played. So going back to our Hall of Heroes, if you use Yarn to, which is an upgrade, if you use that to discard a physical resource that kills a minion, that would then trigger Hall of Heroes. It's you, as in your identity, your upgrades, events you play, but it does not include any supports, and that's a key difference between upgrades and supports or allies. So that's you. Moving on to the second rule that I kind of jotted down when I was going through and building out this video is, what is the cost of an action? So the cost of an action is everything that comes before the arrow on a card. And so what I'm thinking about is if you have an event or if you have a upgrade that has do this to do this, then that's the cost of an action. So I'm not necessarily thinking of, the locust costs 2 to put into play. That's not what I'm going for. I'm thinking more along the lines of like momentum shift, where momentum shift says heal 2 damage, arrow, deal 2 damage to an enemy. The cost of the action it precedes the arrow. So if you are at full health, you cannot fulfill the cost of the action. You can actually not play momentum shift. This is actually really apparent in the core set with Captain Marvel, right? It's heal 1 damage. If you are at full health, you cannot heal 1 damage to activate her hero ability. So therefore, you cannot carry out her action. So the cost of the action is before the arrow, and then the subsequent response is after the arrow. So you have to do before, after is optional. So let's go back to our momentum shift example. It says heal 2 damage from your hero. Check, you did that. Deal 2 damage to your hero. If there's only a villain with 1 damage out there, you can deal 1 damage. You do not have to fulfill the result of the cost to its full potential, but you do have to pay the cost in its full. That kind of leads me into my next point that I want to talk about, which is alter ego and hero actions. And I see this question get asked a lot, and it's a question that I had and was pretty confusing to me actually at the very beginning when I started playing this game. So I see this and it always pops up with Spider-Man. It's, for some reason, it's always Spider-Man. So Spider-Man on his alter ego side says that you can generate a mental resource. That does not cause you to exhaust. And this is one of the big things, is it just happens. Whenever you do generate that resource, you then have to use it. You can combine that with other resources. So if you did that and discard a card, you could play a 2-cost card from your hand. However, you do not need to exhaust. You only need to exhaust if a card tells you to, or you are using one of the basic powers. On your alter ego side right now, the only basic power we have seen is recovery. And then on your hero side, it is thwart, attack, or defend. So those are the only times you would exhaust your hero. Any other time, you would be told to exhaust, or you don't exhaust. One example of this would be like Miss Marvel's ability. It says whenever you play an event, you can exhaust Miss Marvel to pull that event back into your hand. So there, it clearly states that you exhaust, and therefore you do need to exhaust. But if you're looking at like Spider-Man's alter ego, Peter Parker, you do not need to do that. Makes the game a lot easier too, actually, once you stop exhausting for those hero and alter ego actions. Alrighty, so the fourth thing that I had on the list is something that I don't know if I want to say I loathe it. It feels like a very heavy word, but what I do not like is when revealed effects and then put into play effects. And playing is different than putting into play. That took me forever to wrap my head around. It's just a little bit of a change of words, but it has drastic consequences. Once you kind of think about it and you start reading the cards, some of them are worded very specifically so that they can get around this. So like Nick Fury. Nick Fury is an excellent card in the core set. It says whenever Nick enters play. It does not say whenever Nick is played for a very specific reason. It says whenever he enters play, that way you can play Make the Call. You can play Sneak Attack and still gain the abilities of Nick's ally's response. However, on the flip side of the coin, if you take a look at, say, White Tiger, who's a leadership ally, she says whenever you play her from your hand. So that is paying the cost and putting her on the table to play her from your hand. Then you get to trigger her ability. Sneak Attack put into play does not trigger White Tiger's ability. So it's one of these things that just, you gotta read the cards carefully. It's something that I have fallen very much victim to, just not catching those certain words, and it can be game changing. Sorry, that one was kind of complex and kind of confusing. I apologize, but it is one that will change your game. That leads me to my last one, which is defend. So, okay. So defend is gone through some changes. So when I first started playing the game, defend was not what it is today. And what it is today is you're considered a defender, or you've considered to defend the attack. If you have exhausted to use your basic power as a defense to their attack, then you are considered the defender. Or if you play a card with a defense keyword. We will throw up Preemptive Strike. So Preemptive Strike says right there on the italics that it's a defense card. It's a defense trade event. That means you are then the defender of that. That means that if you take no damage, you can trigger Hard to Ignore, or all of these cards that say when you defend against an attack. One of the biggest things for me is that just like attacks, just like thwarts, defense is also the same. If you play an event card that has that trait, you are considered the attacker, you are considered the thwarter, or you considered the defender. That allows you to activate a lot of your upgrades. It makes protection significantly better, which was an excellent, which is always fun to see. But that's defender. Now, where the caveat comes in is if a ally defends, then you are the target of the attack. However, the ally is the defender. So if you have Nick Fury, you've played him, and then Claw's attacking you, you declare Nick as your defender, you exhaust him to defend, Claw kills him, you take 0 damage. That does not mean you can then trigger a Hard to Ignore or any of these other upgrades that say when you defend, because you did not defend. This kind of goes back to our first one, Nick defended, your ally defended. One last caveat that I wanted to put on this defend is in multiplayer games is when the villain initiates an attack against you. So say I'm playing 2-player, I have Spider-Man on one side, and I have Captain Marvel on the other. Spider-Man, the villain is attacking Spider-Man. Villain initiates an attack. Spider-Man, because of his hero ability, gets the card draw at that point. But Spider-Man doesn't want to take the attack. He doesn't want to defend. He has pretty low health. Captain Marvel has an ally. She has Squirrel Girl out here that is going to defend the attack. The villain initiated. At that point, you can declare defenders. Squirrel Girl can step in and take the hit. At that point, the new target of the attack becomes Captain Marvel. So it's very nuanced. It can be kind of tricky, but basically at that point, if there's like overkill damage that happens, so say it's Rhino. Rhino's attacking, overkill, and Squirrel Girl defends. The overkill goes to the owner of the ally. At that point, Captain Marvel would take any of the additional damage that is dealt over and above Squirrel Girl's remaining hit points. Defend can be pretty tricky. The defender, who's playing, are you defending an attack? All of that, it can be kind of tricky, and I think a lot of that confusion does kind of sprout from the changes that have been made in the game, which we're not going to get into that. That's a whole nother video. Probably not. We're just, that's in the past. I'm sure there were a ton of videos on it at that point. I wasn't necessarily making content when that rule change did come out, but play a defense card, exhaust to defend. You are declared the defender, just as you are if you played an attack card, exhaust to attack, you're the attacker or the thwarter for the same situation. So those are kind of my top 5 biggest questions or mistakes that I see newer players making. Did I miss any? What are some questions? Please let me know. I would be more than happy to talk with you. Throw them in the comments. Any questions that you have or anything that you think should have been on this list. I want people to use this video as a resource so that they can come back and they can see the comments and they can see kind of where some people are making other mistakes, because if you have made the mistake, I guarantee you another person has. The game is very tricky. It can be very nuanced in kind of the action windows and what can happen when, and so please leave a comment and help other players out. Thanks for watching. I'll see you all around. Enjoy playing some Marvel Champions. Peace.